Okay, this is take like 3. Hopefully we're not sideways, and I'm here with my good buddy Chip Richards, but we're just going to wait and see whether in fact we are sideways before we get going a bit more. And hopefully we will start getting some feed here, and that'll tell us whether we're on sideways or not. Not used to these technical issues. Normally we have someone here supporting us who's under 18 is the best. The younger the better. It's just you and me today, Chip. Oh, and now I've lost my Facebook
Solo
feed.
on the mountain.
Yep. I'm not used to, I don't deal well with technical issues with computers. If everything works well, I'm okay. But if it doesn't, I'm not great at fixing things.
It's actually interesting how we all have like little things, like everybody has different little triggers or things that might unravel us, you know? And, you know, you'd be very happy speaking to 10,000 people, and it wouldn't matter if you missed a line, but can't quite get the iPhone to go sideways or horizontal, and it unravels.
Well, here we go. I think we might be on. Yes, we are, and we are on the right angle, so we're happening. Now, see if I can get this to go bigger and it'll show us. Yep, here we are, and we've even got a chat here, so people can say hello, which would be lovely. Yep, fantastic. We are happening. So, Chip Richards, welcome to By the Fire. I've got to turn the volume down here so that we don't get feedback from there. We are the right way up. People are telling us. Peter Lennon, thank you very much. And woo, we're on. Okay, let's do it. I would like to start with a welcome to country. We are on Arukwa land of the Bundjalung Nation. We know there was a very strong Indigenous presence here. And we genuinely pay our respects to the elders past, present and emerging. And I think it's especially relevant in these times now where our Indigenous friends have been saying to us that things have to change, and we are certainly in a time of change. So welcome, Chip. It's really special to have you here. Chip Richards has been a friend of mine for many years now, and I've been really looking forward to tonight because I know we've already had great fun just getting ready and organised and getting things happening, and I'm proud to have you on tonight, Chip, because of what you've done and what you do. Chip has had a huge career as an elite athlete in the US Olympic ski team, and a couple of major injuries there as well, which actually stopped you going to the Olympics, and there's a huge story there. In fact, we did a TEDx Byron Bay talk some years ago, and you spoke about that there, which was just extraordinary. And then Chip was the coach of the Australian Moguls team. I think you've been voted Coach of the Decade, and you've coached world champions and done all sorts of extraordinary things. But then really for the last 20 years, your work has been around coaching and supporting leaders globally, people who are doing out-of-the-box extraordinary things and really working with human potential. And I know a great passion of yours is the hero's journey, and it'd be fantastic to hear about that tonight, and the similarity there with Rites of Passage. And so it's just great to have you here. And we like to start with a check-in when we do these By the Fires. So, Chip, I'm going to hand you our talking stick, and you did ask me to introduce the talking stick a bit better tonight. And in our work with Rites of Passage, we often use a talking stick, and it's a way that we say, okay, only the person holding the stick talks and the rest of us just listen and we don't interrupt. And we ask the person talking to share what's going on for them, what are their experiences, their stories, their feelings, and we use it in a check-in and we use it in our circles. So Chip, I'm going to hand you the talking stick, and I'd love you to do a check-in for us.
And do we need to check and make sure we're still live, or are we good?
I think we're still live. I just pushed the...
There's a little pulse there. Life is good.
Yeah.
So firstly, just feeling super grateful to be here with you, Arne, up on this beautiful mountain of yours. I think of this as Arne's mountain whenever I come up here. It sort of just feels tonight quiet, and we are right on the edge of winter. And my family came up here to our home up here about 7 weeks ago from Melbourne, where we've been living for the last year. And we've been nestled in and growing food and keeping our rhythms pretty close at home, but actually quite busy reaching and connecting to people all around the world. So I'm just actually enjoying the calm of being here tonight. It's been great to be here with you already. I got some starter for some sourdough bread, so it's already worth it being here. I'm in. Looking forward to this conversation.
Great, Chip. And my check-in, great to have you here. Great to be by a fire. Definitely the weather has cooled down. And I've had my partner, Dr. Katrina Wallace, who was actually by the fire with me 2 weeks ago. She's been up here, and two of my stepsons have been up here staying with me. And I also had my son and his fiancée staying nearby. But then on Saturday, my partner and her 2 sons went back to Sydney because school started. And so, this beautiful little family that we created up here, and it was actually very challenging for all of us to get into a rhythm, and we got into that rhythm, and then they've had to go. So I've been dealing with that. And my other bit of check-in is that I've been loving being here on my land, and today I actually with the other people who live here on the land, we did a chainsaw ticket, which means we had a professional chainsaw operator come up and train us in safety around chainsaws and how to sharpen them well, how to maintain them well, and that was just another world and extraordinary, and so amazing to meet someone whose life and passion is chainsaws.
Yeah.
So we had a great day. Okay, so awesome. Chip, there you go, a random thing that was fabulous. I'd like to start. I think your history is so interesting. Having been an elite athlete, having been in the US Olympic ski team, having been injured and not being able
to... on the Olympic team because of the...
Well, okay, because of your injuries. Yeah. And so maybe just a couple of minutes just telling us a bit about that part, that world, that life that you had, and let's hear about that for a little bit. Okay. And I'm going to put a little bit more wood on the fire.
Oh, sweet. So I think what's interesting is actually this month, next week, 26 years ago. God, that seems like a long time ago. I arrived to this continent, and I thought for 3 weeks or three months. I came down here for just a season, a winter season, to coach the Australians, and I was fresh to the coaching path. I had been an athlete. I thought for a long time that my whole reason for being here, my purpose, my passion, my destiny was to go to the Olympics as a freestyle skier, and I had gotten quite close to that mission, but had a couple of really quite radical, life-changing injuries sort of right at the peak of my career that sort of 2 seasons in a row that happened in such a way that it just had me sort of pause in my tracks and for just a moment set aside this kind of very driven, very focused, very committed mind of the athlete and open up to, wow, what if not this path, what is here for me? And in that moment of pause, I sort of discovered the path of coach, and about 2 years later, it brought me down here to Australia. As I said, I thought for 3 to 6 months I was going to do 1 season here in Australia and then ride my bicycle west. I told my family I'd be home in about a year, maybe 2. And like I said, it's been 26 years. So a couple beautiful things happened in the first 3 months here. I met and married my gorgeous wife, Ash, and this sort of short-term seasonal gig with the Australian team opened up into a full-time head coach Olympic position. So in kind of a strange sort of way, about 4 years after my own ambition as an athlete ended, I sort of had the opportunity to fulfill my Olympic dream, but in a totally different way as a coach. And that just opened up a whole pathway that's kept me here on this side of the planet, and a whole life and family and friends and work inside of the coaching space in many different spheres. So sitting here 26 years later, I can look back at the moment of quite radical interruption to what was a normal life, or what was my normal or my kind of predictable path as an athlete. And at the time, it was a crisis. At the time, it was a tragedy. At the time, it was a massive loss of what was a dream. But I look now and I see that that created this whole life since then. So I feel very grateful to be here.
Thanks, Chip. And let's. I'm very interested in this thing around. You have something that you want, or a desire, or something you're aiming for, and it doesn't happen, but then it happens in another way. And so let's sort of mark that as a theme, and we'll see if we can come back around and talk about that a bit later on.
Yeah, great.
Because that's a very interesting thing. And I noticed just watching some of the people who've joined, and lovely that Ray from Melbourne's on the line, and good friend of mine, and another friend, Frederick, who I met when I was in Mundakala in Sweden 18 months ago at the European Men's Gathering. So fabulous when we do these Facebook Lives that we get people coming from all around the world. Ashy on the line, and if people want to make comments, Scotty from Western Australia here, and questions, and we'll try and answer some of them later on.
Awesome.
So Chip, I know that you also are a beekeeper, and you've got how many beehives have you got now, Chip?
Currently 8.
8 beehives. You're a passionate beekeeper. You're a surfer. You're a free diver. You do stuff with the whales in Tonga. You take people over there, and your whole thing around human potential and helping people to really. Well, you tell us. I'd love to hear what's your definition of human potential, and there are many forms of leadership, training, coaching, whatever you want to call it, and it'd be fabulous for people to hear a little bit about how you work with people and where you're at with all of that.
It's a mighty question. I think in terms of where I'm at with human potential, I would say the more that I work with people in different walks of life, in different countries, in totally different industries, what I find more and more is that actually mostly what people are looking for and what people think they need to get or learn about or pack into who they are, mostly it's already in them. And the work that I do is primarily around creating spaces that allow the coaxing out of that kind of power or kind of essence that's inside of each of us. And so my work's not so much about kind of teaching concepts or pushing ideas in as it is around creating kind of frameworks that make it safe for people to push into their discomfort and go beyond what that comfortable bubble is to see what's actually there waiting for them. And I think it's related to the question that you said before around when we want something and that doesn't happen, but something else does. I think oftentimes our subconscious or our conscious mind, we've got an idea of what we think we want, but what I feel more and more convinced about is that there are aspects that life is like pulling from us, wants us to be here, the part that wants that the life wants Arne to play in this life, and you might be able to go this way or that way, but as you get to the edge of that, life will find a way to pull you back in and pull that out of you in a way that might not be your choosing or your initial idea of what it's supposed to look like, but in retrospect, it's usually way more aligned with who you really are. So.
Yeah, I thought I was going to be a doctor. In fact, I became a doctor, and I spent 20 years working as a doctor. But I left, and I now work in rites of passage in Australia and around the world, and in many respects, I think I'm still a doctor. But instead of doing it in the system, and instead of doing waiting for people to get sick and then trying to, keep them going. We now we do preventative medicine and it's also about human potential and one of my fondest memories of you and our friendship is that you brought your son Josh on one of our Making of Men camps, and it was an extraordinary experience.
Extraordinary.
Yeah. And I'd love to hear a little bit from you about that. And that, I've always felt that one of the most special things that we do on our camps is we see the potential of the boys as they become young men.
Yeah.
We see their beautiful sides, and we actively look for their gifts and their talent and their genius and their spirit. And I clearly remember your time on that camp, and it'd be great just to hear some of anything you want to share about that, or any memories that you have.
Yeah, I mean, I've got instantly, I haven't thought about the camp for a little while, but instantly I've just got these moments that kind of pop right into my mind. And I think what was really interesting, a couple things that really stayed with me about the camp is firstly to see how people arrived. And, there were a lot of young men. Josh was pretty stoked. He knew you, and he knew a couple other people. So he was actually, I think he was looking forward to it. But there was a nervousness. But a lot of the young people.
How old was Josh?
I think he was 13.
13.
Yeah, maybe 14. Maybe he was 14. But a lot of the other boys, when they arrived, there was some reluctance to be there, and there was also some reluctance you saw in some of the dads. There was you could see some dads were kind of pulled out of their normal life, or they had to park 5 days of work to be there, and some kids
and their mobile phones
in all of that. So there was this kind of layer of letting go and kind of crossing the threshold, in the hero's journey terms, from the ordinary into this sort of journey that we went on. But what was really cool to see was that, just by creating that space for that little layer of resistance to fall away, people just started to sink in. And by the end, by literally by 24 hours, everyone was in, and by 36 or 48 hours, no one wanted to leave. And by the time we were leaving, lifelong friendships had been formed. And I think again it speaks to this opening question around I think a lot of what got people there, and the way that they arrived was with one idea, but what the experience had for them was something different. And and what was really beautiful for me to experience was for myself as a dad, but to also experience all the other dads. I think it was completely as nourishing or more nourishing for the dads as it is for the young people. And just a gorgeous experience.
Thank you. So I'm here with Chip Richards, and we've just been reminiscing a little bit about the Making of Men camp, the 5-day camp that Chip came along with his 13 or 14-year-old son at the time. Josh, how old's Josh now?
20.
He's 20 now, so that's good 6 or 7 years ago. And we would have had 24... fathers and sons, or actually some of the boys came with men who weren't their fathers. Some of the boys come with stepfathers or grandfathers. And we run it as a rite of passage. We really run it as something where we are acknowledging and celebrating that these boys are becoming young men. And we want to do everything we can to support them to be the best young men that they can be. And we believe that the way that we can do that is not by telling them how to live their lives, but by sharing our stories and allowing them to take what's in those stories for them. We create challenges for the boys, and we get them to spend time thinking about what sort of young men they want to be and what behaviours they know they need to leave behind. They create a vision for their future, and we actually have a process where we honour and we recognise the gifts and talents and the genius and the spirit that is in each of those boys, young men who come on the program. And they're very special programs, and I'm very happy that you were able to be there with Josh. It was very, very special.
So cool.
But we run them as a rite, that we call them a rite of passage, and it's interesting that you described that when people come along, there's resistance and they come thinking one thing, and then when they get in there, there's still initially resistance, and then they realise that it's actually about potentially something else, and then they settle in and then have an amazing experience and don't want to leave at the end.
Yeah.
It's interesting how I've been talking about this pandemic being a rite of passage, and the lockdown is actually a part of that, and sort of mapping the similarities between the stages of a rite of passage and what's happening with us in lockdown. And 6-8 weeks ago we were talking about how there was a lot of resistance for people coming into lockdown, and they were still trying to keep everything normal, and especially the teenagers were still wanting to go out and do things, and it was quite difficult. And then people sort of eventually accepted that we did have to spend a period of time at home and things were going to be different. And then, having spoken to so many people and done this work over the last couple of months, there's really been a theme where it hasn't been how people have expected. And for a lot of people, there was resistance for a few weeks, and then they've settled into some sort of routine and rhythm, and that's been different for everyone. A lot of people have found that difficult, but also within that difficulty, especially being with family, and I know for me personally, the first few weeks having all the family up here was really challenging, learning how we wanted to be together. And then the last period when we actually settled into a rhythm was very special. And now, as it's things are starting to end, there's a part of me that goes, well, I actually want more. I'm not quite ready. I wanted more time with the family, and yes, there's been challenges, but something special and some opportunities have come up. I do feel, actually, though, before we go on, it's critical to acknowledge that there are people who have experienced enormous suffering and hardship during this period.
Lots.
There are people who have lost loved ones, and there are people who have lost jobs and don't have an income. And so, there has been an enormous range of the challenges that people have gone through. For many of us in Australia, we haven't had the level of disease that we were concerned about having, but certainly jobs and the economic situation, and we really don't know where that's going to go. But I definitely feel like it's been a rite of passage, and there have been challenges, and also some incredible opportunities. And I'm interested, you talk about the hero's journey. I know it's something that's important to you, and I'd love to hear from you a little bit about what the hero's journey means to you, and how this period of time has been, the hero's journey has been something that's been manifesting during this period, and what you've observed.
Yeah, great. So I think it's one of the things that has linked us together over the last several years, and we've often reflected on in a way, the parallels and the similarities between the rite of passage work, which you're so deeply connected to, and the hero's journey, which I bumped into quite powerfully about 15 or 20 years ago as well. And in the 1 minute version of the hero's journey is that the phrase comes from a man named Joseph Campbell, who basically studied story across all of time and across all different places, from African fables to modern, big budget movies. And what he found across all different stories of meaning and truth was that no matter where they came from in time or geography, there was this fundamental pattern that ran through every story. And he called it the Monomyth, or the hero's journey, because he felt like it basically reflected the stages of evolution and the stages of transformation that we each go through in life, many times, but also in the kind of overarching story of our life. And the hero's journey, like rites of passage, has some key sort of turning points and some key kind of moments which allow or create an opening for people to break through or experience some aspect of themselves or their calling in a way that they otherwise might not have. And I think most people can relate to the hero's journey, anyone who watches a film, because most modern films are kind of broken up into the hero's journey format. And, in a very, very basic sense, we start a story, and each of us are included in this, in our ordinary world, our normal life, our normal kind of existence. And then what often happens is what we call the call to adventure, and it's like an inciting incident that interrupts our normal life and basically calls the hero to take a step out of their normal life, out of the predictable, out of the ordinary, and onto a journey where they will have to kind of slowly break down how they have been used to doing things, and then start to develop new ways of thinking and new skills, and ultimately come to a place where they go to what in mythology is called the sort of innermost cave, and where they basically come to the place in their journey where they realize for themselves, what is my greatest opportunity for growth, or my greatest discovery of who I am that's reflected in this journey to me. And once that moment happens, it's called the elixir. Once the hero kind of gets the lesson, then he or she or they have what they need to then transition back into their ordinary world and effectively transform their ordinary world into an extraordinary place. So if you kind of track that basic rhythm, we could say that a call to adventure is in film is like when Frodo is given the ring and is told to leave the Shire and go, meet at the Prancing Pony motel in 3 days or something like that. Or when Ray Kinsella is told to, if you build it, they will come, and told to sort of plow up his cornfields and build a baseball field in Field of Dreams. In life, right, for me, a great call to adventure was sort of the breaking of my body at the peak of what I thought was my path, as an athlete. And if we bring it right to this moment, this sort of great call to adventure that we all got, 6, 8, 12 weeks ago was the sort of the inciting incident of the pandemic that hit the planet and basically stopped all of our ordinary worlds, and whether we wanted to or not, whether we chose it or not, kind of sent us all on the beginning of a journey, which was very different, a massive departure from our ordinary life. And so we've been in this, whether we chose to or not. And the beautiful thing about the hero's journey and the call to adventure is it often comes in a way that we wouldn't have chosen. It often comes in a way that's totally inconvenient or completely kind of like radically shakes the tree in such a way that we can't ignore it. And I've been fascinated by the sort of power of this moment that has sort of intersected all of humanity. And it's been so interesting to watch my own experience and to then support other people's journeys over the last several weeks as they've kind of navigated their way through the extraordinary world of the journey. And in one way or another, we're all kind of at this place or coming to a place of that innermost cave where we each have to decide, what is it that is my elixir from this experience? There's so many different opinions about what's happening on a global level that actually, one place we can all go to is, well, what's in it? What's really in this for me? What's this experience leaning me towards, calling me towards? What is the message for me in my life that as things reemerge back to whatever the new normal is, at least we have something with us that we can take with us and reemerge with and help to transform our own life and the people live around us to the next level.
Wow. Okay. So just for you to know, also, by the way, we have Omri with us from Israel, and Bridge Bala is with us, and some people who we really love who are joining us. And I see Samantha's here, and my cousin Jenny from Brisbane, who's actually going to give me some native bees, hopefully.
Fantastic.
So yes, it's all happening. And Chip, if we stay with this hero's journey, the calling. So the calling can also be, I'm hearing from you, imposed on us.
Yeah.
So we didn't choose this to happen. And once again, this models the rite of passage. It's the separation. There's a call to adventure, which is the separation from the everyday life, and then we're on the adventure, which is the middle stage of the rite of passage, where the transformation happens. And you talked about now going into a cave, and the elixir is the discovery of what is inside us and what is our potential.
Yeah.
And I'm going to put it back on you on a personal level, we could maybe both speak to this. What from this journey, if it's been a hero's journey for you as well, and not in the way you expected, not in the way any of us expected, what's been the elixir for you? What have you, or have you found are the learnings, the insights, what's in your cave?
Yeah.
Chip?
Great. Like a classic innermost cave moment, for those people who are going, what is this cave? What is the innermost cave? Is, one of the Star Wars movies, Luke Skywalker's been fighting Darth Vader, like for movies. And there is a moment where he's in the innermost cave, he's out training with Yoda, and he's having a dream, and he's fighting Darth Vader, and he slashes Darth Vader's head off, and then he goes and he lifts off the helmet, and it's his own face, So it's like, it was Steven Spielberg's way of saying, hey, whatever the lesson is, it's actually in you. And I think for me, firstly, what I've been seeing, what I've been recognizing in a lot of the people that I've worked with, I work with a lot of really busy people that are very driven, very ambitious, that spend so much time doing. And one of the great calls to adventure, that has been radically imposed on a lot of people, is much more being, much more home with family, much more time, walking, doing things that we don't normally give ourselves time for. And what I'm recognizing in the people that I work with is that space that people are giving themselves is been quite nourishing, and out of that, people are rediscovering their relationships with their family. People that are rediscovering their relationships with their children. And so these are some of the elixirs that I'm seeing actually popping up in ways that business leaders mightn't have asked for, mightn't have kind of had on their calendar, but it's arriving. As well as some radical innovations in the way businesses are run, reinventing businesses in a way that they've always wanted to, but they didn't have the courage to. I think for me, one of the elixirs for me has been a recognition that I've realized that, particularly even during this time, I spent a lot of my energy giving and kind of serving other people's visions and dreams, and it's a massive part of my calling to be here on the planet. And one of the things that I've been kind of reminded of by myself is that actually I've got a couple seeds, kind of dream seeds of my own that I've been carrying for a little while that actually probably need to be nourished in the same way that I nourish other people's visions and dreams. So that's been like one of the elixirs I've found in the cave was, wow, actually there's a couple things that I'm holding, been holding safe for maybe long enough, and it's time to give them more energy and make them as important as I've made other people's visions and ideas. That's one for me. How about you?
I have found that it's been a big learning for me, especially around family, and I've actually felt very humbled and even some shame around some of the things that I've realised, which is that I really let my work dominate my life, and in many ways I've given other people and other families and other children what my own family and my own children have really wanted and needed from me. And so it's been a really big wake-up call around coming home for my family, for my children, and for myself. Yeah. And similar to you, I realised how much energy I put out there, which I love doing on one level, but there's also a point at which it becomes a cost to the people who I have a huge responsibility and love for, which is my family. So that's been a really big one. And the opportunity to have, a good couple of months with my family, with my, children, and even my oldest son, Jarrah, who is in England, in London at the moment, and his partner is one of the senior people working with the coronavirus. In fact, her job, every day she collates the numbers that come in from around the country, and she gives them to the chief medical officer, and he gives them to the prime minister, who reads them out to the country. Wow. And so my oldest son, who's in London, who's 30 now, Jarrah, we've been speaking so much more than, we speak pretty much every day. And that's been a joy. And I love him so much, and having that opportunity to talk to him like that. So it's really made me look at myself and what I'm doing. And we were talking a bit about this before, that this elixir, as you call it, and I would call it the insights and the realizations, same thing.
Elixir's a nice word, though.
Elixir's a great word, Chip. It's a great word. By the way, I have to say, do you know there are some people who, when you're with them in your life, you laugh more and you smile more and you feel happier? Well, Chip is one of those people for me. Thank you, Chip. Social distancing, but thank you.
Broke the rule.
But, Chip and I will often meet at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning to go for a surf or some place out in nature somewhere or whatever, and we just check in and we just laugh and we're honest and we're raw, and that's a very special thing, and I really love and honour that about you and about our friendship and our relationship, Chip. And now I've completely forgotten what I was speaking about. Oh, no, I know what it is. Yeah. The elixir, as you call it. And by the way, we're drinking an elixir which is made up of Chip's bush lemons that he picked today and brought over to me, and my kombucha, which I made and is sitting up on my bench in my kitchen, and we've combined the two with some secret ingredients, and it's the elixir. Yeah. There you go.
It's always the secret ingredients.
It's always the secret. No, it's the natural products, which I love.
Absolutely.
So how do we take this elixir forward? This is so important. If we're going to, this separation, this call to adventure, this time in the cave, these deep realizations that come with challenge, how do we take that forward? And I know that if we don't, we waste an enormous opportunity. So I'm interested to hear from you, not only about what you're going to take forwards, but how we can support the people who are joining us and who are listening and who, have had their own realizations around how we can take this forwards.
Yeah, nice. And if you haven't had if you haven't sort of thought, oh, I've got the elixir, there's nothing wrong either. I mean, I think it evolves and it unravels more and more each day, and it's multi-leveled, right? So I think, but what you say is right. I think this yearning to get back to normal, firstly, if we follow the hero's journey, once the hero kind of crosses over the midpoint, that what's called the point of no return, which those, we all kind of have moments where we kind of sunk in to the isolation, where we kind of might have fought it and we kind of thought, oh, this is what it was. And then we just kind of went, oh, fuck it, we're here and let's just sink into this. Once you cross that place, in mythology, you can't, technically you can never go back. You can't go back to how it was. You can return. But you by the nature of the journey that you've been on, your responsibility is to return with what you've learned. And I think just actually even having the intent to go, okay, there's all this, so much happening around me in the world, and and people have different ways of managing the media and navigating all the different voices that are around. But I think one of the things which feels very, very important is that we do take the time to go, okay, amidst all of this, I do have an intention to take whatever lesson, whatever message, whatever gift, whatever tweak or change is here for me, and take it forward and bring it back, and don't bring it back, but return in a way that actually is going to transform or create a long-term change in my life. And I think starting just with that intention and an openness to listen, to go, okay, if there's something for me here, show me, ask life, and then create a bit of space to hear what might come back for you. So I think the intention of it is the first step. Action is going to be key, but actually just making that decision is probably the first step.
Yeah. Great. I think the intention is critical, and I know in my own personal experience, I've had intentions and I've had insights and I can lose them. So I'm also asking people to find some way to capture and document.
Yeah.
And that can be writing it down. It can be drawing it. It can be doing a little 5-minute, 2-minute video of it.
Yeah.
It can be sharing it with family and friends. But if we can actually find some way to capture the key things that we're going to do and have it there so that we can see it later, and also to tell people who we are close to and in relationship with, so that they can then actually support us in what we're doing.
Yeah.
I think that will also make a difference.
Yeah, nice. I think that's great. So have the intention to receive the elixir, have the intention to get the gift, the message, the whatever it is, and then find a way to capture it when it comes, write it, share it, and I think there's another one that springs to mind as you're speaking. I'm actually noticing, and I'm seeing it everywhere. I mean, this around the fire chat is an example. I think there's an immediacy of action that's available to us right now, and I think a lot of times, there can be a gap between an impulse or an idea and then when we actually fulfill it. And inside that gap is all sorts of perfectionism and judgment and all sorts of, which can delay the fulfillment of the idea for years or lifetimes, right? I think just taking a simple action, or if you have an impulse, if you have an idea, if you feel like you've got something that's wanting to come forth, actually to take an action and make a step towards it is a huge thing as well, because it kind of brings the idea or the impulse and it kind of grounds it in a way, like you have with this, over the last 3 weeks. So you've probably thought for years, wow, I'd love to have people around the fire and have good chats, maybe. But now you're doing it, and it took us 4 or 5 times to get the camera right tonight, but just the fact that you're taking those steps is making that vision real, and every time you do it, it's just grounding it in and bringing it to life. So I think action is key.
Okay, so how about we name one key action that we're prepared to commit to publicly in front of people that we're going to take forwards, or one or more. And there's a lot of people watching who we love, good friends, and and then they may hopefully be able to hold us accountable and support us. You want to go first, Chip?
Sure. That's great. So I think one thing that I feel clear about, and I'm inspired about, that just before I say it, one thing I've noticed with myself and with other people that I'm working with is that there's kind of a couple categories. There's stuff that we've been meaning to do for years, or we've needed to do for years, that suddenly we have opportunity to do or time to do. And then there's this whole space over here, which is like in the space that we have, new impulses are emerging that we wouldn't have planned for, that we wouldn't have predicted. And I think being open to both is quite exciting. For me, one thing that I can commit to you and to whoever is listening, I've had a really unique opportunity over the last several years to connect with leaders and people who are leading interesting lives and interesting projects in many different sectors and many different parts of the world. And I really, really see it as a privilege. And one of the gifts in that is kind of recognizing some unique attributes, and wow, the leaders that I might work with in Italy, and how I often think, wow, I'd love to take what those guys are thinking about and share that with what those guys are working on in Japan, and in different parts of the world, kind of like the bees do, cross-pollinating. And so one of the visions that's kind of come to me very, very strong in the last 8 weeks is creating a forum that brings leaders from different parts of the world together to share their learning, to share their journey, to share their challenges and their issues, and to take them on a hero's journey, of what is next for them as an individual and in their kind of path of contribution in the world. So I'm in the midst of kind of creating seeds for, I guess, kind of global mastermind groups that might bring groups together, leaders from different paths, to learn from each other. And I'm really inspired about doing that.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Well, I'll watch with interest around that one. Fantastic. And for me, so on a personal level, my commitment is to, and it's funny to be saying this at the age of 56, but to go deeply into this journey of family. I sort of left family 20 years ago, and I realize I've missed out on a very important part of life. And so my commitment is to really go deeply into that and discover more my own stuff around family, which includes relationship, children. There's a lot of work to do there. And it's really been started during this period, and I've had some of the most amazing conversations of my life and realizations in the last couple of months.
Wow.
And then something that I really hadn't expected in terms of is a work thing, that I just see that there's a different way that I can do my work, and that I think a big thing that's come out of this whole period of time is around, and interesting, it ties back into family, and that so many children have been brought up by institutions, and by institutions I mean the schools and the universities, and I think that a big part of this period is people, including me, realising that we need support with parenting, that we have to really be bringing our children back home, and we can't be relying on them being brought up by some external force that's going to sort of do the right thing for them.
Yeah.
And so I'm very interested in how we can really support and find ways to parent and give our children the skills and the way forward as they become young adults. So I've got some ideas around that, and I'm really looking forward to doing that. And if I can, stick to those things around being strong in family myself and supporting parenting as much as possible, that will definitely fill up plenty of my time, and that would be very good things to focus on. So we've got a little bit of time left, and it would be great if anybody has any questions or anything that they want to hear about any more from Chip or myself. Would be very happy to answer that. So we've got a few minutes if people want to put some things down in there. And Chip, maybe if you could tell us, where your work's going, and if there are ways that people can check in on what you're doing. I know you talked about you've got a website that's on its way. It'd be great to hear a little bit about that while we wait and see whether anyone's got any questions for us.
Yeah, cool. So I before I say that, I wanted to just acknowledge your commitment, which I will hold you to account to. And I really love, I think that, one of the great elixirs for humanity over this last 12 weeks has been the gift of family, has been the gift of reconnection to nature and the natural rhythms. I mean, wow, we never ever could have created this on our own. That aspect of just deep return to family and it's gorgeous. So I think your appetite to serve that, you've got fathers and mothers around the world now who, we've all been deeply reconnecting with each other and with our kids, and there's an appetite to maintain that as we move forward back into our whatever the future, transformed future is, and we're going to need guidance. So,
by the way, someone said to me, one analogy of what's happened is it's like Mother Nature has sent all of us into our rooms with our families, but sent us into our rooms and said, go into your room and think about life, think about what you're doing, and just spend some time there. And when it's time to come out, we'll let you know, and we'll bring you out, and hopefully you'll have worked out a few things around what you want to do differently.
I love that so much. I love that so much. Last night I was actually on a call with a whole group of leaders that we normally talk a lot about, what the project that they're working on, and we started with a check-in, and the check-in question was, what's been the highlight of your week? And what was the most beautiful thing was it was about 12 people shared, and each person shared the absolute highlight of their week was, one of them was, the bike ride that he had with his daughter down the river, and that normally he would be traveling for work and would never, ever, ever have that experience. One of them was the walk through the pine forest in the Dolomites of Italy, that normally he would just never have had that opportunity at this season, but it was all around, this, and they didn't even pick it, but I was just watching them all share. None of their highlights had anything to do with any of the work that they're all working on. They were all these moments of connection with themselves, with their loved ones, or with someone else. And it's Mother Nature. She's put us in a room. Yeah. I think it's great.
And I've heard a lot this reconnection with family. A friend of mine said how there are gangs of children riding around the streets on bikes for the first time in 20 years. It's what we grew up doing, but that doesn't happen very much anymore, but it's happening again. Yeah. And another friend said how he bought a basketball ring and he stuck it out in the street, and all the kids from around the area have been coming and shooting hoops. Yeah. And so all these things that haven't happened and for so long, and so many people really connecting with their families and with themselves, and that's a gift. That's a gift.
Super gorgeous.
Yeah. And there's a question that's come through from Frederick, and the question is around what was the biggest challenge during this period of time. And I'd be interested to hear your answer, Chip, but my answer is that the challenges during this time and the opportunities have been completely intertwined. One of the greatest opportunities and greatest gifts for me during this time was having all the family here, and one of the greatest challenges was having all the family here. And one of the greatest gifts has been having time here on my land, but also one of the challenges was that because I've been having time here on this land, it's because my business has disappeared and I have no income. And so, of interest to me is the absolute connection between the challenges and the opportunities that have come up during this period.
Yeah, powerful. I love that. I mean, that's a whole next conversation. I think one of the challenges that I've experienced and I've also seen, I've seen it, at the 20-year-old level with my son and his girlfriend and their friends. I've seen it with my own family and myself, and I've also seen it with all the people that I connect with and work with. Is how do we balance our desire to stay connected with what's happening without getting completely pulled out of the moment that we're in and doing what's going to actually be the best thing for us to do to build our energy, to build our sense of calm and centeredness. And I think it's been super challenging because there, we have a sense of responsibility and a desire to help, or desire to know, what's going on and what are we supposed to do, and there's so many sources out there, and I think the risk and the challenge has been, how do I get the information I need, but not in a way that completely pulls me out of the moment that I'm in, or pulls me out of my power or my sense of center, and makes me completely lose a sense of well-being in myself. And I've it's been powerful to see and even experience myself to be in a really beautiful setting where everything's calm and magic, but inside I'm in total turmoil because of the way I'm digesting information, and just finding ways to get the information that we need, to do the responsible actions that we need, but also to build like disciplines around how we take care of ourselves, where we look to for our true answers, how we keep our own energy centered. I'm fascinated with that, because I think no matter what happens out of this, what's going to be needed is centered humans that are clear and that are able to respond. And so I think balancing that, how do we stay connected to what's happening, but also stay really connected with where I'm at, who I'm at, what I can do in this moment.
Mm. Thank you. And we were talking about it before. One of the things is, how much are we, ringing up people and, asking them how they're going, and how much are we just really trying to be in the space that we're in. And there's a lot of people out there. You and I both know people all around Australia, all around the world, and people who we love and who we want to keep connection with. But also, I think it's so important that we don't miss this, don't miss this moment, and see how we can learn and grow from it. So, Chip, thank you for joining us tonight.
Yeah.
It's it's just always a pleasure to spend time with you. When I know Chip's going to be in the house, I'm like, I know it's going to be a good time, and you are a man who I can say to that I love you. And that's a beautiful thing to be able to say to someone that you love them, and I do love you, and I love spending time with you, and every time it's inspirational, every time it's fascinating, every time it's a bit sacrilegious, every time
full spectrum,
full of laughter and full of adventure, and that's a really great thing. So thanks for coming on tonight. Thank you to everyone for joining us. We will post this Facebook Live to YouTube. We'd love people to join our Facebook Rites of Passage community group, to check out our website, the Rites of Passage Institute.org, Rites spelled R-I-T-E-S. We put together an e-course for parents and children to do at home called Parents and Children Growing Together, which is also on our website. And our aim is to really build a community and support the community in their individual adventure, call to adventure during this time, and also to find as many ways as we can to support their families. So I do like to give the guests on around the fire the last word. So I'm going to say goodnight to everyone. I'm going to hand over to Chip, give him the last word, and then I'm going to push the button to stop the presentation. So thank you, Chip.
Arne, thank you so much for hosting me here on your land. You asked before, how do people find me? I actually have a fresh website arriving to the universe. I've been kind of deep in the kind of engine room of life for a while, and I have my first genuine public presence reemerging in a couple weeks' time. It will be chiprichards.global, so watch this space. And in the meantime, all I can say is I'm just in this moment right now, I just couldn't be anywhere else. This is a wonderful evening, and I'm grateful to connect with everyone here, and particularly with my brother who I love very much, Arne.
Thank you.
Thank you.